action, not speak.
What about the quality of women leaders which affirmative action has thrown out? Like even in Panchayati Raj institutions, we still have women whose husbands and fathers are controlling.
No, we have brilliant women. We have brilliant
no,
women
I
have come up.
disagree. I think
Yeah.
those women
Brilliant
are incredible. I mean, some of our best sarpanches are actually women sarpanches.
So how many cycles? So how many cycles of elections has it taken to throw up that leadership?
Ultimately, if you look at it in the context of the long march of history, 30 years is not even a nano blip. If in 30 years you've been able to come to a situation whereby not only do you have extremely wise women manning democratic institutions at the grassroots level, but actually bringing about positive change. I'll give you an example. When a male sarpanch comes to me and he asks for MP lands, he'll ask for MP lands for streets and drains, right? Which well, I don't want to even get into it. And when a woman sarpanch comes to me, the first demand would be to give money to an Anganwadi. That's the qualitative difference in terms of what their priorities are. And so therefore, and I noticed this as a pattern over a period of time, that the issues which are dear to women leadership or to women leaders at various levels are actually issues which matter to people in society. And I'm not saying that drains and streets don't matter, but all I'm saying is that in terms of priorities, they seem to possibly get it much better and much right. So to say that affirmative action or whatever we have since 1993 has not thrown up a good crop of leaders, I think would be an erroneous statement.
But the natural progression to legislatures and to parliament hasn't really happened. That's exactly what you're saying, right?
Look, eventually, is there a glass ceiling beyond the Zilla Parishads where the reservation ceases? At the local government level or at the municipal corporation level? Yes, undoubtedly. And you can find a million excuses as to why it is happening. But the fact is that it is happening. Now, would statutory reservation be able to break that barrier and allow women who've come up to a certain level as a consequence of what has happened between 1993 and 2023 to go further up? Of course, yes, because if there is a certain percentage which is carved out for them, obviously they are the people who are going to fill it. But the point that I was trying to make was that yes, reservation is desirable. Nobody's going away from that. But without that, Kavitha ji mentioned about boardrooms. You see, today women are fighting to get into boardrooms. Some of them have gone into boardrooms also, right? And some of them are at apex leadership positions in corporate India. Now juxtapose this against what was the situation 40 years back. So the natural progression of things that I talk about, where you talk about the evolution of societies, these time frames that we are talking about are really blips on a radar.
No, I just want to add something. When a women representative comes, she talks about Anganwadis, she talks about kids, she talks about nutrition. This is again typecasting women in a certain dye. I don't want to be in the parliament just because I want to solve my kids' issues or other women's issues. I want to be in the parliament because I want to take this country forward. And there are so many women surpluses whom we have seen have started collecting the taxes, going from home to home, bringing people to pay taxes. Yes, which men sarpanches could not do the heck. And they were very effective in terms of water management. They were very effective in terms of managing the harvest, in terms of building new godowns for the grain to be stored. So there is overall leadership issue that we are talking about. And again, I painfully go back to the society where if you do not let the girl think from the very beginning that she can think about the overall society, not only just about cooking, cleaning her sister, her house, taking care of kids, etc. That is again, going to reflect back. And as I said, top down, bottoms up, both approaches have to happen, but it has to happen soon. Yes, natural progression, 40 years is really a small blip in time, and I really have Madam Sonia ji to thank for it. At least she got it passed in the Rajya Sabha. But then what about Lok Sabha? The current government has the mandate. They're not willing to pass it. So if at all anything can be done from all the parties to build up that pressure, I think there will be some kind of change which can happen.
You are actually, you're talking about also earlier today, you just talked about sexism in the boardroom, sexism in other professions, and sexism in politics. You are the Chief Minister of Telangana's daughter. And when you stepped into politics was after a very long struggle when TRS, then TRS, now BRS, struggled for a separate state. So you are really, if I say, that, from a very privileged, politically privileged background. Have you also faced that?
We were not privileged when we started the Telangana movement.
Absolutely.
We were not sure if the state was ever going to be a reality. We were not sure if my father was going to become a CM, but it all just happened as a part of the process. So I am not privileged in that sense because I walked a very, very tough path to come to a position where I am today. And being a CM's daughter, I lost an election. So it doesn't matter, as long as you are in politics, you are working for people, that is what matters. You win an election, you lose an election, but having the guts to stay put, that's what matters and that's what makes you a leader. So I feel women or man, sticking to the path that they chose, staying put in the politics, trying to work for the people. So I'm not privileged in that way. I'm not at all privileged because I understand what people on the ground are facing. That's why very painfully I'm saying every aspect, every circle, there is a limitation for women. That kind of needs to be addressed at the local government level, at the state government level, at the central government level. And it has to happen. And many more leaders like this have to come probably to change that.
Right. Thank you so much. Can we, now we'll open the house for some questions. We'll have...
Please keep your questions short and crisp.
We'll just give you the mic.
Manish.
No, fine.
Thanks. I don't follow politics, but my question is that if somehow we could ensure that Indian politics could become not as high cost as it is at the moment, won't that ensure not only more women being able to fight and win elections, but also fewer criminals in parliament and improve overall quality of politics in India?
Ma'am, first please start following politics because politics is not for few people, it is for all of us.
You can't have that expectation given the state of politics. And
that is when we need to participate and change it. We are people of this country. All of us at least should be a part of it.
You have to make sure it's not a waste of my time. At the moment it is.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If everybody thinks it's a waste of our time, then how will the country progress?
If you take me and my attention for granted, I'm sorry things will not change.
Can I submit something to you? Can I submit something to you? Your destiny is being decided by the politicians. If you stay out from there,
I am being kept out.
please allow me. Please allow me to speak completely. If you don't ensure your participation in politics, some tax will decide for you. The choice is yours. Do you want to be part of the political process, or you want to leave the entire turf for tax to come and take decisions?
I thought you just spent hours and hours discussing how people are kept out of
No,
politics.
I'll tell you one thing. There is a tendency on the part of many people to say that I am away from politics, I am allergic to politics. But please trust me, the moment you say that,
You're giving
you
your
are
right away.
giving a right to somebody else. Who is
I'm asking you a question and look at the way you responded.
No,
No, no, we were
Do you
yet to
expect me to
continue.
ask the question again next time? after this?
Absolutely, absolutely.
no. Actually, you should make sure that you are also a participant in political process.
I did that, right? I asked a question. What did I get?
Let me respond to your question for fullness of it, because I think it's a very, very pertinent question.
Turned into a conversation.
You see, the problem of electoral financing and the problem of the financing of political systems is not something which is unique to India. I think every democracy around the world has been grappling with it, and grappling with it rather unsuccessfully. In the United States of America, the US Supreme Court upheld something called super PACs, super political action committees, which allows for billions of dollars of funding to actually travel into the American political system. This is a difficulty which goes across the board. It's a 600-pound gorilla. People have not even started scratching the surface of trying to address this problem. And so therefore you are absolutely correct. The high cost of running political systems, and it is not only elections, it's the cost of running a political system from, let's say, the booth level to the national level, which is divorced of elections, because unlike in the West, where political parties are platforms to put some people into office, in India or all over the developing world, like you have standing armies, you have standing political parties, right, which function whether elections are held or not. So it's a huge problem to which there isn't a very simple, elegant solution or an answer which can be provided. And unfortunately, there is a complete conspiracy of silence in even acknowledging that this problem exists. Insofar as criminalization is concerned, there are people who are accused of heinous crimes. But as criminal jurisprudence stands constituted, you are innocent until proven guilty by the highest court in the land. Number two is the issue of political persecution, where you start using and abusing the instrumentalities of the state in order to target your political opponents. Now, if someone is deliberately made out to be a criminal by starting a legal process, does that essentially make him a criminal? Because when I go and file my nomination, I will have to write, I'm accused in FIR number so and so, I'm accused in FIR number so and so, I'm accused in FIR number so and so. But do all those accusations translate into guilt till the time I'm not held guilty by the highest court in the land? So therefore, I think, you see, you flag the correct issues, right? But the solutions to these issues are unfortunately far more complex than a binary answer. That's the short point I was trying to make.
Let me just add to Manish. I fully appreciate the spirit of your question. I can vouch for the fact that the expenditure for the election has gone up significantly. I would say in this very hall, Advocate Prashant Bhushan was saying that a political party spent almost 15,000 crores for the campaign during the last Lord's election. And I know a particular constituency where 500 crores was spent for a by-election. Seriously to you. So the expenditure has shot. That's why I have been emphasizing the fact that the extent of money power and muscle power in electoral politics have gone up. Like anything, I don't know how to counter that issue. That's why I was saying that participation of women in politics is absolutely necessary on two counts. One, you have no right to keep away 50% of your population away from policy. Second, to cleanse the politics, you need to have women also. See, one of my colleagues in JNU, he did a dissertation. He found that only after this reservation in local bodies, many of the municipalities, many of the panchayats thought of having a restroom or a toilet for women, even in bus stand. Before that, there was no space for that also. So unless you have the women in public space, you can't cleanse the society. So I would humbly urge the podium madam, please don't be hesitant. Please be part of the political process. I know it is going to be a little tedious for you, but somehow we all need to be part of the process. Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize. We didn't mean to say, you are not a part of the system. We said make an extra effort because as long as a democracy becomes more participative, then only it's vibrant. Two, my problem with most educated folks in this country is they do not come out to vote. In cities, in Delhi, in Bombay, in Hyderabad, in metros, educated folk don't vote. So who's going to vote and how are the elections are going to get influenced? That is a fundamental question as well. So I am one, sir, you should help us out. We should bring compulsory voting in this country. I'm seriously one for that. We should all really work towards it. There are some experiments across the world, but unless that happens, I don't think right candidates will come out. And in terms of cases, it is quite silly that even if I do a dharna, I have to say that I have done a dharna, and then my count will become as one in the criminal. Who are the criminal MPs this time? My name will always be there, because in movement we have done hundreds of dharnas. So the cases are still there. So there is no discrimination between which is a petty case, which is a serious offence, etc. So the number shoots up just like that. So please don't be sad. Indian Parliament doesn't have as many criminals as it looks like, because there are many petty cases also listed in that. Thank you.
Just turning the table, I think what John had said, that this is one of the rare panels where the author is also questioned. So Nidhi, this is a question actually for you. Like Smriti, you were saying that from chasing headlines, which is actually a natural trait for all the journalists. So what kind of challenges you faced getting the stories, the insights from the 17 leaders, and I'm sure like in your research you have actually experimented and learned from your experience, but also spoken to a lot of people, including Unity and all. So the question is, what kind of challenges did you face to break the ceiling to write and finally come to the 17?
So honestly, what was very surprising for me when I started working on the book was how the women leaders were willing to open up and speak about themselves. Usually when you're chasing the daily headlines, you don't get that kind of response. But once you try and know what really goes behind that, that politics, the person themselves, it's very interesting that when you want to understand something, right from, say, when you get down to brass tacks, you actually will be surprised how easy it is to, when you really want to know, and when you're not trying to create a sensational story, when you really want to tell a story which is really not a catchy headline, but you want to understand the issues. So a lot of the book was done during COVID, Anu. A lot of it was, and very interestingly, some of the women leaders, like very elderly, like Pratibha Patilji, was actually willing. I mean, she came out and this is the first time she's gone on board with any interview or something. She spoke for a very, very long time. She spent a very long time in explaining what went on with women in politics in the 80s and the 70s. And she was masked all the time, double masked all the time, and still wanted to tell her side of the story. So that is very interesting. Once you get beyond the sensational headlines, it's always, and when you're trying to understand an issue, it's always very easy to, and obviously they were willing to tell their story.
Just a personal question, how easy was it to find a publisher?
Sorry?
How easy was it to find a publisher?
So it's very interesting. This book wasn't my idea. It was my publishing director, Anla Ozukum's idea. It wasn't my idea. It was her idea to
put for a publisher.
No, so it was her idea that she said that, why don't we put together a book on Indian women politicians. So for me was to go behind the.
Nidhi, can I ask you a question? See, as I said at the beginning, the media is full of sensationalism and trivia. So why don't you decide that you should not have that much of juicy syrupy content in this book? You had many occasions where you could make it a little more.
Why didn't you write the controversial stuff?
For example, I mean, leaving unmarried young lady in a midnight in a room, but you didn't. You didn't stay over there. You just left her there and left. If it were to be anybody or anybody else, I'm talking about Mayavati going into Kansharam's apartment. If it were to be anybody else, they would have hung out there, made another 2-3 pages on that, and would have made it a syrupy content. What made you think that you should refrain from such syrupy, juicy arguments?
So these are women, John Vitas, these are women who have.
No, I'm talking about the way in which journalism is handled nowadays.
No, I know what you mean, but why don't we keep it factual? Why don't...
That's what I said. Did anybody compel you? Did anybody tell you?
No, not at all.
Not
Why don't we just keep it factual in the sense that and give them an opportunity to defend themselves?
I'm complimenting you.
No, I know you are. I know you are.
No,
I'm exactly. So to ask.
I said, despite being a journalist, why don't you refrain from
that I will take a strong exception.
No, I'm telling you.
It's not as if we are.
I would say I have every right to say, because my profession also is journalism profession, how the journalism has changed, how it has become so sensational now. Are you changing the real content, real item now? No, absolutely. See the television content, how much it has changed. Is it what viewers and readers want? Think about your page 3, page 4. Earlier the page 3 used to be page 3, now it is page 1 now. It just changed like that. So that's what I'm asking you.
So
I'm complimenting you, congratulating you for being very responsible author of this book.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Manishankar, you wanted to ask? Sorry.
My name is D. Veladri. Some government, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, more than states, giving the local bodies ladies reservation and SC, ST, BC. Why is the parliament system not, all parties not support in OBCs, SCs? Why?
It's a political question, Kavitha.
Some government, ration shops, local bodies, market committees, almost all government and all states give the reservation system in the local bodies.
Exactly.
Not accepting parliament system and assembly system. OBCs, nomadic tribes is there. Most backward class is there. Backward class is there. Begging class is there. Not development any sector in the OBCs. Please give me all parties support in OBCs reservation, ladies reservation, parliament system and local body, some government not implementation, local bodies also.
You'll have to take
Please sanction that.
That is exactly what we are fighting for. On a local level, many governments have taken initiative. For example, Telangana government has also taken initiative to give reservation in agriculture market committees as well. So we've gone until that deep root level to make sure we extract the leadership of women. But then when it comes to assemblies and parliament, yes, we need some compulsion to be given. And that is what all of us are precisely fighting for. And you are very right, OBC, this government is not even willing to take up the census of OBC, forget about women reservation. So there are certain issues that we are trying to address, and thank you for being on the same page.
So do you want, you wanted to say something?
I see a golden opportunity for bringing about 1/3 women into parliament, because the current government have built a parliament building with 888 seats.
Yes.
They're going to
increase.
The current strength of the Lok Sabha is 542. So there are about 340 seats which will be additionally added potentially. And if we reserve all of them for women, then automatically we will get approximately 1/3 women into parliament.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, as somebody who was involved with the original representation of women, I want to explain a major difference between the panchayats and parliament. If in the panchayats we were able to do it because there was no central panchayati raj legislation. So we were starting on tabula rasa. And while Manish is aware of the tremendous problems we encountered within the party and within parliament in general, we were able to carry this through because there was nothing before. Now, if in 1940...
Karnataka, sir?
Sorry?
Karnataka 1985?
No, post this.
Post that.
Karnataka.
I'm sorry, my hearing is very...
Sir, Karnataka, I think 1985, I think Ramakrishna Hegde had.
I'm talking about the country as a whole.
Okay.
I'm not talking about a particular state. When we had this legislation for the country, we looked into everything that was good and bad that had been done by the different states in local bodies. The new thing we were doing is producing a template for the country as a whole. And since no template existed for the country as a whole, we were able to push through the 33% reservation, which today in 20 states has gone up to 50%. Yet it's astonishing, particularly among our middle class women, particularly among our educated women, that they don't glory in the fact that we have 14 lakh elected representatives who are women in our local bodies. Why are they not proud of it? Why is this not tom-tom? There are more elected women in India alone than in the rest of the world put together. And I've been crying myself hoarse about this fantastic achievement of India for the last 20 years. But I find it's largely the upper middle class and upper class women who dismiss this because their attention is focused only on parliament and the state assemblies. Also, we find that in states like, for example, Haryana and Rajasthan, there have been qualifications introduced for women to appear in elections. These qualifications are, of course, general, but they particularly affect the women. Why have they done it? It's because election after election showed that in most panchayats, the electorate preferred women who were accessible. And the poorer the woman, the more accessible she is. And the richer the woman, the more likely she is to be sitting in Chandigarh instead of in her village. And that is why there was such a surge in women's representation in the panchayats of Haryana that they brought in such draconian measures that 85% of the women who had been elected in the previous election couldn't even stand in the election that followed. Now, unless and until the women of India start celebrating the fact that their poorer sisters, their OBC and Dalit sisters, have been given this enormous prominence. In one election, the panchayat election in Karnataka, we found that as against 33% reservation for SC women, the share that they secured was 54%. And as far as ST women in Karnataka were concerned in that election, the share of ST women went up to 64%. So there is an achievement that needs to be celebrated, and I'm afraid your book doesn't. So in fact, I would say it's a brilliant book, but the failure to understand that there is a huge empowerment of women taking place at the echelons that more important, then there should be a woman sarpanch, then there should be a woman MP. A woman MP will be as useless as male MPs. As Manish and I will testify, because we are not given much prominence, and you have to be a very prominent male MP to be even given an opportunity to speak. So therefore, I see that the main reason why we cannot get a consensus on 33% women in the Lok Sabha, whereas we've got it in the Rajya Sabha, is that in the Rajya Sabha, you don't have to fight an election. You get nominated by the party that has the adequate number of votes, and you know that once you're nominated, your election is most likely going to go through. But in the Lok Sabha, it's a very hard-fought election constituency by constituency. Now, if you're going to introduce 33% women's reservation in the Lok Sabha, you have to get rid of 33% men. On what criteria? 33% of the most idiotic men, 33% of the most crooked men, 33% of the men who don't speak, 33% of the men who speak too much. On what basis are you going to get rid of these 33%? What is being suggested is a lottery. That if you're lucky, you will be in the 66%. If you're unlucky, you will be in the 33%. That is why it's not going through. I have therefore advocated that we should have double member constituencies. That every constituency produces a male MP and a female MP, then automatically 50% will be women. One alternative that has just come up is this decision to increase the number of seats in Parliament. And if the total increase is handed over to women candidates, then we would have made a major beginning. Otherwise, you are relying on gender discrimination against men in order to secure gender justice for women. And that is the fundamental dilemma that has been posed before the elected members of the Lok Sabha, which is not the problem of the Rajya Sabha members. So if we understand this and analyze it properly, then a golden opportunity is there before us. That when the total number of MPs in the Lok Sabha is increased, and it's going to be increased.
It's in 2020.
I don't know whether it will go up to 888, but it's potentially possible. So every increase should be reserved for women, and that will automatically bring them in large numbers into Parliament. Thank you.
My question is to Mr. John. Vulnerability is certainly a prime issue as far as electoral politics is concerned. Vulnerability. But how the vulnerability comes in Politburo? Or any
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, I told you, unlike other political parties, we don't have, let me just tell you honestly, we don't have any nomination committees. Nomination committees. It's pure election, organization elections. So if it is organization elections, naturally, ecosystem would be very important. So we are in an ecosystem which is a male-dominated society. We need to acknowledge that. I'm not denying the fact that you see we are away from the reality. We are absolutely part of the society. And suppose I'm not, a political party can decide that you see we will have 30% of women nominated. But our party doesn't have that. We have an organization election which is done regularly, and it should be through election only, even whether it is a man or a woman, it should be in a committee. So since it is part of the larger ecosystem, it has to be like that.
I would just like to acknowledge what Honorable Manishankar Ayar has said, that increasing the number of seats and then reserving the 1/3 of it to women looks like the more plausible solution, and that is what our party president KCR Garu also has been saying. Because if we fight for the 33%, with this kind of majority, if a government is not able to take a stand, that means there has to be a different approach towards it. And that really is a good approach. So thank you so much for sharing it with us. Sorry, did you want to continue the
keyword or anything like so maybe the Congress, why aren't they more? What is the bar on putting more women in party positions? You know, why
Fair enough.
They simply don't want us. There is no doubt.
So if the question is that constitutionally, why don't you reserve 33% or 50% or 40% of the position for women in a political organization? There's absolutely no bar in doing that. Insofar as the existing system is concerned, now I can possibly take the same excuse as my friend Mr. John Vitas has taken, that we have an organizational election, right? And that organizational election is booth level upwards. So therefore, under those circumstances, when you have an election, and that election ostensibly is a contested election, then if you do not have mandated reservations, how can you really stop anyone from contesting? So therefore, the answer very clearly is that unfortunately, given the inherent biases which exist in our society and the manner in which the political system is structured, bottoms up, till the time you do not do it by some constitutional discussion, even within political parties, unfortunately it is not happening. I recall that there have been many such proposals over a period of time that we must ensure that at all levels, we have substantive women participation or women in elected offices or in party positions. But unfortunately, the reality is that it does not happen. And despite the fact that, we've had for 2 long decades a very, very distinguished woman actually leading our party.
Thank you. Do we have time? Manishi, or
Yeah, I have a flight to catch,
Yeah,
but
so,
we'll do the last question.
Thank you, Kavitha, ma'am. You are bringing the women labor force participation statistics. We are very less, even we are less than the Saudi Arabia, 37% of women labor force participation. So what is the problem? We are not calculating like the woman who is working in a shop, the shop is in the name of husband. We are not calculating what the work she is doing or the woman is working in a farm. So I just want to know that why we have a low data even than Saudi.
The disguised labor force, it could be in terms of youth or women, is not calculated very specifically. You are very right. If it's a family-owned business, 4 people work and we only count it as 1. That is a different story. But in formal workforce, where we can actually calculate and have statistics, the problem with women is we have a very inverted work cycle. As in, when we hit our prime in the career, that is when probably you decide to get married and have a child, so you have to take a break. So once you take a break, then coming back to work has been very, very difficult for women for 1, 2, 3 reasons. 1, workspaces are not very friendly. 2, there is nobody at home to take care of the child. And if you have to hire somebody to take care of the child in this nuclear family, it is going to be very expensive, so you can't do that. So women are in turn forced to, stay at home to take care of the kid. And 3, of course, after you take a break for 2 years, for anybody, not for a woman, a man also, it's very difficult again to get back to the same level in their own field. So these are the 3 challenges. But I felt COVID has been a blessing in disguise for women, because that showed us that you can work from home. So women participation has kind of increased, but is it formal? Do we have the statistics? That is something that we are all waiting for. So COVID, I think, has been a blessing, especially for working women.
Nidhi also.
For who? For Nidhi also. She got the brilliant book, so
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Supported women's reservation. The way AI, ISA, SFI, all these students' wings of the left parties are organized, you would feel that the left would actually give more space to women, right? And you still have in CPM just 2 women in the Politburo. Why don't we see more women leaders in the left holding those positions in power if you're such a big champion of, women's reservation and, not just the bill, but also within the party organization?
Nidhi, the part of guilt of this rests with all of us. I can very well admit that. And you have talked about one of the Politburo members, Brinda Karanji inside. But let me just tell you, this is part of the larger ecosystem. See, however sincere one political party is towards women's reservation, they can't implement it. Because last session, Smriti talked about a factor called winnability. You didn't dismiss that. You admitted that.